I'm Julian Rogers with the very latest Climate Guardian update on COP28. Well, Caribbean leaders called on the world's developed nations to recognize the threat of climate change to their very existence as small developing countries. They point to the region's vulnerabilities and efforts to become resilient in the face of dramatic changes in the weather and the impact on people and property. Appearing at COP28, the leaders included Gaston Brown of Antigua and Barbuda, the host country, the next alliance of small island developing states, calling for a sharing of the profits made by energy companies to help SIDS deal with the impact of the climate crisis.
The smallest contributors to global CO2 emissions, yet among the hardest hit by climate catastrophes. This is not just an environmental crisis. It is a glaring testament to a world where profits are prioritized over people and planet. It is a world where oil and gas conglomerates, shielded by the power of wealthy nations, continue to reap astronomical profits, while the survival of nations like ours hangs in the balance. If we breach the 1.5 degrees threshold, the consequences will be catastrophic, not just for small island states, but for the entire planet. The weapons of mass destruction of our time are not explosive devices, but rising temperatures, scorching droughts, and relentless sea level rise, all consequences of unchecked avarice and apathy. Our proposal for a carbon tax, backed by nations like France and Kenya, is not just a call for action, it is a plea for justice. We stand in firm support for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. It is time to curb the reckless exploitation of fossil fuels.
The Bahamas boast its undersea forest absorbs more carbon than the Amazon rainforest. Still, the archipelago must face the unrelenting pounding from hurricanes year after year, wreaking havoc on the tiny islands and islets, displacing people and forcing major infrastructure repairs, rebuilding that was never budgeted for.
Time has run out. Thankfully, mercifully, the record high temperatures experienced earlier this year in the Bahamas did not translate into a catastrophic hurricane season. We were lucky. But tropical storms and depressions did hit us. They caused high levels of rain, extreme winds, widespread flooding, interrupted our power supply, and resulted in significant costs and loss of revenue. Over the coming 6 months, before the next hurricane season begins, we can use the time to strengthen our National Youth Guard. We can build more homes out of the groundbreaking, carbon-negative, ocean-resistant concrete pioneered by a Bahamian company, Patana, headed by entrepreneur Rick Fox. We can also raise more finance using our blue carbon credits, backed by our extensive underwater fields of seagrasses, which absorb more carbon than the Amazon rainforest. Are we expected to remain quietly grateful? Frankly, we do not understand why everyone does not share our sense of urgency. Doing what is needed to help us also helps you. Will you not act urgently to save yourselves? We still live in a world where financing always seems immediately available for the bullets and the bombs. This is a choice. Our plight is mostly invisible. The slowly warming seawater, slowly rising up through our porous limestone islands. The slowly dying coral, no longer able to support the slowly dying fish. By the time our plight is made visible for all to see, our luck will have run out. It will be too late. The storm will have passed. We can only pray that there is something left to see. Friends, we simply want to live.
St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister Terence Drew says that he set his country on a bold agenda to convert to green energy. He took the time as well to compliment Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley on pushing the Loss and Damage Fund.
Commendably, however, the Bridgetown initiative of my sister, Prime Minister Mia Mottley, will expedite equitable access, growth, and crisis response. And to the COP28 presidency, we welcome the capitalization of the Loss and Damage Fund. Geothermal development in our Twin Island Federation allows for nationwide underground electric grid connection between our two islands. An investment of US $350 million over the next 5 years can ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis goes fully green with the capacity to provide clean energy to our neighboring countries. Recently, we renegotiated 40 megawatts of solar energy with battery storage capacity, which will ensure that there are redundancies built into our energy grid. We are acting moderator. However, our size does not dim our ambition. In fact, it stirs especially our choices, our pathway as our choices diminishes. And to wrap up, the transformation to a sustainable island state is so profound as it is linked to our survival. The survival of what it truly means to be Kittitian and Nevisian.
St. Lucia's Prime Minister Philip Pear pointed out that while the region is pursuing financial support to deal with the impact of climate change, he reminded us how important it is to put people first.
To address these financial challenges, Caricom states, including St. Lucia, are pursuing readiness projects to better access finance. We are also pursuing innovative financial initiatives from conservation bonds to disaster clauses and exploring new opportunities in carbon markets. We are pushing for a reform agenda for international financial institutions through the Bridgetown Initiative and other new economic measurements that will include our vulnerability, like the CDB's Recovery Duration Adjustment, the RDA. Madam President, we are nearing the 1.5 degrees centigrade warning threshold, and we must put people first before economic ratios and statistics. We must leave Dubai assured of 3 key messages. We leaders must commit to 1, pursuing 1.5 degrees centigrade pathways for just, equitable, and accelerated transition. 2, accelerate progress in implementation of the global goal on adaptation. Deliver transformative finance for a 1.5 degrees centigrade agenda.
Suriname's President Chan Zentuki reminded his audience of the value of the forest that occupies a major portion of his country. He says they're putting greater emphasis on its stewardship at a time when they are about to take advantage of their newly discovered oil resources.
As part of the 8 Amazonian countries united in the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, ACTO, we are also committed to fight deforestation of the Amazon region. My country and people are forced to adapt to extreme dry and wet weather events which cause losses and damages. At the same time, we must respond to the legitimate demands of our population for economic development and diversification. This we do through a balanced approach consisting of developing the natural resources through environmental friendly strategy, by sustainable forest management and active protection of biodiversity, and also by continued transition to green energy and other green innovations and technologies. The recently announced offshore oil and other economic developments in Suriname will be developed on this basis, contributing to the energy security for the world. We are committed and confident that we will remain carbon negative, and let that be very clear.
Ghana's Vice President Barrett Jagdeo focused on the value of the forest that occupies some 86% of that country. But he stressed that the value of the carbon taxes earned by Guyana is being deployed in the interests of the indigenous people of that country.
We believe in Guyana that the only way in the long term that we'd be able to preserve forests is to have a model that has several elements. So in our case, we believe that there are 4 important elements to the model that we launched in 2008 and we recently updated. First of all, forests have to be integrated into a national development strategy. Secondly, the solution has to be a jurisdictional scale solution. Thirdly, indigenous people and those who live in the forest have to be part of the solution. Then we believe that you have to have strong forest legislation and robust enforcement of that legislation. And the next element is, which is a critical one, that you have to identify a revenue stream to outcompete alternate use of the forest. Without these key elements, we believe that forests cannot be preserved in the long term, either through philanthropy or just goodwill or declarations. So in Guyana's case, we've been able to keep our forests intact. 86% of the country is covered with forests. We have one of the lowest deforestation rates in the world. We have recently been able to have our entire forest certified at the jurisdictional scale through the Architecture for REDD+ transaction. It's the only forest in the world that has a jurisdictional scale certification. We've been able to get certified credits, and we've sold 30% of those credits for $750 million at a minimum. So whilst we hear about pledges of $10 million and $50 million, etc., from public sources, it is not at scale enough to outcompete alternate use. We are now utilizing this money. 15% goes directly to our indigenous communities. We have now 500 projects in 242 villages being implemented, indigenous villages. The 85% remaining of the potential $2.5 billion will fund adaptation measures. So it is integrated. This is what we're doing in Guyana, and we believe that is the scale that is necessary to preserve forests, not pledges and philanthropy, etc. And sometimes we don't see that happening globally.
Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley continued to emphasize the value of the Loss and Damage Fund being operationalized, while at the same time warning about the impact of methane gases and calling on the oil and energy companies to help reduce the heat.
The recognition that loss and damage alone, however, is only a part of the equation, because for every dollar that we spend before disaster, we can save $7 in damage and indeed in loss of lives. And we continue to need significant funds for adaptation for countries that simply will not be met unless there's a different approach to how we address both the capitalization of the international financial institutions, the commitment of countries, and indeed the recognition that non-state actors and individuals need to come to the table to add to the capitalization. If not, we will not make it possible for countries to access the funds necessary to avoid the damage. The reality is that the global methane agreement that the world needs to see has not yet come. And while we are seeing countries move towards greater regulation, we need to be able to have concrete action with respect to the controlling of methane, largely because its damage in the near term is far greater than even CO2. Where is it going to be found for the progress to be made and to avoid the tipping point? We need oil and gas companies to agree to fix the leaks in their pipelines and to ensure that they also stop the flaring. The bottom line is that there have been voluntary commitments, but that has not gotten us very far. We need strong regulation and compliance to ensure that we can minimize the extent to which that continues to lead and hurl the world into hotter temperatures. The science must be simple. To turn down the heat, you simply have to turn down the methane. And until we accept that, we will go over a tipping point. Secondly, we need to change our attitude towards access to capital. And I'm not going to say, I'm tired saying it. Long-term capital is needed in order to be able to stop us from being able to choose or force us from having to choose between people and planet. The Bridgetown Initiative, the Paris Plan for Action, all of it sets out that these are tipping points that we need to pass. And let us agree to leave here with a global methane agreement, and let us agree that we have not yet fully unraveled what is necessary to turn the opportunities for countries into reality by making long-term capital available. We need new players at the table in terms of the insurance companies and in terms of the credit rating agencies and the bank regulators. If not, we will be speaking to each other and not seeing the level of progress that we need to see with respect to unlocking the financial conundrum that will give countries relief to be able to save each other.
I'm Julian Rogers with the very latest COP28 report from Climate Guardian. We'll continue to bring you the very latest developments from Dubai.